Let me know. Well, I guess I'll let you know when I see it's live. It looks live. We're going to do a little bit of a verification, though, because a couple times recently since I've been back, it hasn't, lined up the way I thought. I don't know what happened. So, in one time, I was going for like 40 minutes before it went live. So we're gonna take a couple minutes here like we normally do. Good to see everybody. We'll take a couple minutes here like we normally do to kind of give everybody a chance to join if they're able. Before we start this show, as we're scheduled, the stuff we're gonna cover. We usually take like 5-10 minutes just to say hi to everybody. Sometimes longer, a little intro period. But in this one especially, I want to make sure we're on the same page. There should only be like a 3 to 5 second delay from what I'm saying and what you're hearing. So we're going to check that. But anyway, we'll let it go for a little bit. It looks like it's okay. So let's let it go a couple more minutes, and then I'm going to do a test. And once we verify we're definitely good, I'll say hi to everybody and we'll get going. So this is our Bible and the Trinity in Conflict, Read and Refute series. It's like a sub-series of the original series, which is about the Bible and the Trinity in Conflict. And then I have another series where we talk about some of the early Christian writers, which we're still going through, but we went through some of them, and then there just became reason to move a little bit further ahead. We've also covered some other writers like Cyprian a little bit and Tertullian a little bit, but not to the extent we're going to. But right now and for a while, we're going to be in this Read and Refute series on Athanasius. And so, again, we'll go back to some of the earlier writers, and then we'll move closer towards Athanasius again. And, I'll keep the early Christian writers series to probably, I don't know, maybe up till the start of the 3rd century, around there. And then we'll do Read and Refute from there. I'll find a specific date that'll be good to include and differentiate later writers from earlier ones, more or less. And then that way we can complete this earlier kind of group, just for convenience, making this separation. But they are earlier. The kind of just arbitrary choice is the division, right? Where we say, okay, 3rd century, 4th century. I got to pick a spot, and some people live in between periods. So there might even be some overlap, but either way, I'll figure out how to separate it now that we have this like this. Read and Refute, I want to kind of keep for mid-3rd century and later, especially later like we are now with Athanasius writers, where things get a little bit more closer to these changes that we're getting closer to with Athanasius on the Incarnation of the Word, previously against the heathen. We're going to do it all, right? Just because Athanasius is not a good person. We've talked about this already in these videos in this series and elsewhere. Most people who've, studied him, now, of course, we all have problems, right? I don't want to pick on him or anybody, but he is unusual, right? He's a focal point of a lot of controversy, right? To say the least. And he was excommunicated 5 times. He denied Arius and others like him communion because of their views. Whether he felt he had a reason or not, the fact is, this does not appear to be a good guy, right? He has all kinds of theological and interpretive problems. He clearly has problems with women, right? I mean, he doesn't want them in managing public affairs. And some people try to say, well, they're not supposed to be in the congregation doing certain things. Well, that's not what I'm talking about or what he's talking about, like we talked about earlier. Either way, he also reinterprets accounts like the Garden of Eden, as we've discussed, where it becomes a question of lust, right, with Adam and Eve, not a question of obedience. It's about her body, right? And he has a problem with women and their bodies, right? We'll get into his life more as he starts to talk more, but This is someone who, to me, seems to be not only theologically and interpretively almost incompetent, right? He does say some things, like even in tonight's reading, he says some things that I think are, fine. But it's like 15, 20% of what we're going to read, okay? So no one is saying, whether it's Watchtower, Catholics, ortho-pagans, anybody, even Mormons, everybody has something in their religious practice, probably, right? Unless you are just complete garbage, right? That's good. That's what draws people. That's what keeps people around. They see those things. So it's whether it's a result of that or just the product of people who are in those groups, people have certain things that we all point to as good, and that's a qualified good because we know no one's good according to the master. So we need to be careful at the same time, right? That's a problem for a lot of people. We have a hard time not seeing people good because they show some good things and we get used to them and they're better than other people. And so we categorize them, but nobody is good. We got to watch ourselves. We got to watch everybody, but we don't want to be paranoid, right? You have to have good reason. And you usually do, if you're paying attention to people and you're around. Either way, just be careful who you listen to and what they teach. So with Athanasius, right, he has a big reach. They cite him a lot. He's a longtime figure. Again, understatement. But the fact is, many people don't really read him or a lot of these other people. But, it's funny. I do find people seem to be more familiar with writers like Tertullian or Origen than Athanasius. Probably because that's more of a little bit of a controversial period, like what did they really teach? Whereas with Athanasius, it's just sort of accepted he's fully Trinitarian, right? Which isn't necessarily the case, of course. And there's differences with a lot of these people that linger on in many ways, not just from earlier times, but through to today, and certainly from Athanasius period all the way through and past the 4th century. I talked about this to some extent in my Revelation 11 through 13 videos, which you can really easily find. Now, some of those might not be titled with like Revelation 11 through 13. They're more on the thumbnail. So they might be titled more of a discussion show, requiring you to take a look at the thumbnail. I will do what I can to try and make it easier to search for everything. But sometimes you just got to spend all the time looking for things, looking at things, see what they show or what the title is. Search. If you haven't searched text at my channel and you want to know what I think about a text, that's where you should go first and watch what I think. If you already can see from that what I think, there's no real reason to ask me, right? I mean, you make your decision and you move on. I'm not really here to make people grow. I mean, I want you to grow as a result of what we do, right? I'm here to plant and I'm here to water. That's what the Bible, the New Testament teaches we're supposed to do. So making grow is for God. Now, again, we want to help people grow in a sense that they develop to the point where God can really take hold. But the fact is, there's only so much we can say to people before they have to make their own decision, And if you find you're saying the same things to the same people over and over again, there's really not much more you can say in my experience. They just need to make a decision and figure things out on their own. And if they don't, then that's just the way it is. It's not your responsibility. It's not mine. It's God's. Whose responsibility is it to make grow? We plant, we water, we encourage growth. We do what we can, right? So people can grow around it. But who makes it really grow? Father, right? So don't worry so much. Have you planted? Have you watered? Well, then you've done everything you're supposed to do. And thinking you can do more is really going against what you're supposed to do, right? Because that's not for you, not for me. It's hard because we want to see people progress, right? Growth. And we think, okay, I can help this. No, you really can't. You can do your part. You can do what you're supposed to do and help get them to think, but you really can't make them grow. Not in the way that's going to be the right way, So in either case, let's see. I think we've given enough time. It's about just under 10 minutes. let me say hi to everyone. And then I want you guys to help me verify things are where they should be so that we don't go too far before there's a problem. All right. Good to see Betsy. Unfinished Mystery. We're going to do, of course, Athanasius. And Read and Refute. We'll pick up where we left off last time. This is our last. Good to see Ken Anderson, too, by the way. I don't want to miss anyone, so I want to finish that off. And I'll get back to others. But this is our last live Athanasius Read and Refute show for at least several months. Probably till sometime in May or June. Now, I will try, if, for example, I can fit in a live somewhere between now and the end of May, start of June. I'll put a notice in. So I usually will keep posting stuff, articles or comments or stuff, and I will be doing more clips. So from here to May, June, these last shows and some older ones, I should have time to at least be doing semi-regular clips, maybe one or two a week or here or there, a couple a month. And then I'll do the best I can until I'm into the summer period, probably 1st of June, where I'll have a couple months to, kind of get back live with you for a little bit regular before it gets really busy with me working education again. But good things are happening, trust me. And this time back has really reinforced. Thank you, Ken. I appreciate that. He says it looks and sounds good. Okay. So here's, if you don't mind, Ken, Joker, good to see you. Ken, real quick, and Joker too, either one, just so I know we're basically on the same page. I want either one of you or both of you to type the number 2, okay? Just put the number 2 in the chat. Now from here, I can time when I asked you to do that, and you actually do it. So once you hear that, please do it. So I have a good, read on the delay that you might be experiencing. So with that in mind, we'll just wait for that to happen. And then, as I was saying, so yeah, this period back has really helped me understand that while there is benefit for videos on YouTube and us meeting together like this the best we can, really, the stuff, perfect. Thank you, Joker. Thank you, Ken. So now I know exactly where we are. It looks good. Okay, good. So we'll start in just a couple minutes. Let me finish what I was just saying. A lot of good stuff happening, right? I don't expect a lot from myself in terms of just constantly helping people learn about the Bible. And I pick my spots. I try to be a good person. And, if I'm dealing with someone who's not a good person, then I'm going to deal with them the way I feel I have to. And we all have to do the best we can in those situations. On YouTube, we have some people who are a problem, but we've dealt with those. And I will again. So, because that's my job, right? No one else is going to be able to do some of these things that I can see, whether we like it or not. And I've talked about this many times, and some of the ways we get into discussions with people that might not be great. Sometimes it happens, and I accept my what I have to do, and whether I do it perfectly, which is probably not the case, but I feel that it's right when I have to do things that aren't always easy or great, because I feel like certain things have to be done to make people aware that, no, this is not acceptable, While we have a little fun with people, some of the people who don't like us, and we try to be good-natured about it, it really is tough, because we have these strong beliefs, whether it's Watchtower or the Trinity, the Bible, or the Quran, or just no holy text that's from God, or no God at all, right? These are really powerful subjects, and you can try to approach them with just the deepest respect. And I think the more you're private, with people you know and in an area that's not as open, to, well, all the people that might create a problem. I think it's very doable, probably the way it would normally go, right? When you're meeting in homes or with a community of people, you all know who you are and you're doing things, whether you're a couple or 5 or 10, right? This is not usually a problem, right? Unless you're meeting together to argue, right? Then it doesn't seem to always work very well. It devolves into these differing views, and unless you're very disciplined as a group and you really understand that this is merely for intellectual exploration and what could be the case without compromising the three things in a way that would leave you with a bad taste from that discussion, that meeting, right? So you should be, it's up to you. What kind of people are you? What kind of people are you with? I don't know. It's not always easy, and they change, right? You might bring people, right? You might have some people, right? One person, they bring another, like, who's this person? You got to find out, right? You got to find out a little bit more. Maybe not reveal as much until you find out more. Maybe don't be so excited right away. It's not your job anyway, right? Be excited, feel like, okay, you did what you were supposed to. When you plant, like you did something by your actions, your words, whatever it is that you may have done because of your love for God, your whole-souled love for him and his son, and the person saw that. Whether they connected it immediately with God or not, there was something there, and eventually they'll realize that you're this person in a way that made you do that. That's a plant. It's a plant. It's not always seen right away. That's the whole idea, But you put it there. It's there. You're not going to see it right away. No way. How fast do seeds grow? No. So for a little bit, you don't see anything, and it's like, okay, is it going to grow? It's going to grow, unless it's just a bad seed. And we know the illustration the master gave about the seeds, right? So that's not on us. That's the seed and the master who allows it to grow. But we can plant, right? So we shouldn't be acting or saying things that are in a way, or, if we get into situations like I was saying a minute ago, where we're dealing with tough things, you need to make it very clear, okay, what's going on here? I think I've done enough, and I'm going to do some clips from that one curse discussion we had, which was a great, made it very clear what the Bible's talking about and what's our obligation, what some people do and have to do. Whole bridling your tongue, what that's about, right? About lying about the truth, all these other things. It had nothing to do with bad language, right? Not that, again, unless I'm dealing with one person, right? Maybe two or a few that are like him or them in their ways, right? That's it. I see those as wolves. I see those as people here to cause a problem, right? Now, if I have people who are trying to cause a problem with my family, physically or spiritually, there's going to be a problem for sure. They came for one, right? So am I going to let them take over? Back off? No, that's not a shepherd. The shepherd doesn't let the wolves come in and have a seat. No, get too close, it's over. Now, you as the sheep, you don't know what's going on. Well, then you shouldn't be so close, right? It could be a wolf. Who could it be? I don't know. It's your job to at least know that you're a sheep and who the other sheep are. And if you don't know, hey, you don't know this person. People pretend, right? You've heard of wolves in sheep's clothing. People can act like sheep. People can act like an angel of light and be total darkness, right? It's unfortunate. It really is. And we have people out there who love this stuff. They love to, whereas I feel I'll do it if I feel I'm dealing with a bully and a pervert, right? Someone who's, again, okay, we're dealing with people who have abused and raped women. And look at basically how people act, right? It's just beyond comprehension. But, either way, I'm not here to push things beyond what I have to do. I said what I had to say in these things and ways, and I'm doing that based on my level of involvement with the people involved. And so I don't consider it my responsibility to ongoingly deal with their problems and anyone's problems, but my own and the people with me and the doctrine that I believe in, that other people agree is correct. And if you don't think so, that's fine. But, not everybody just disagrees. Not everybody just comes and thinks we're wrong. There are people who actively try to create problems, and most of you know exactly who those people are. And yet, seems like they're allowed to create a lot of problems, aren't they? Either way, I don't really take it seriously when I consider what other people think once I've established what I know is the case, right? I mean, I'm the guy who defended Watchtower in public debates in ways that have to do primarily with our doctrine and exclusively in those debates cases. And so I also wrote about and took on positions that are the least popular. I'm not concerned with public opinion. I like to be liked, of course, but not because I'm becoming what I'm not. That, I think, is the wrong way to go. While we may have to be flexible and adjust where necessary in ways like Paul says, right? Be this to this person. So it's up to us. It's not something we should be dictating to other people. We should just make sure, okay, we have the same basic beliefs and we're not sinning directly against each other and we're doing the best we can. And we should go out of our way, really, to try to accommodate everybody. But again, when it comes to doctrine, that's different, right? We can't just take a back seat when we know we have people who are not only contradicting what we believe using the same sources or similar sources, but they're attacking us in many ways. Like I said, I mentioned Watchtower, all these groups, no one really likes anyone else in any other group, right? The ortho-pagans and Catholics sometimes pretend like they do, but they don't. So, we're just going to have to deal with it. We're going to have to deal with the fact that not everyone's going to like us, and we might not like each other all the time. Unless we have a problem that it's just clear, you should go to that person and say, you're sinning against me in this way right here. Right? So outside of that, we all have a job to do. We should try to make it easier. I try to make it easier on you. We're going to get into Athanasius right now. Be our last live about this subject for a while. I'll be back Sunday for our last live until, for the rest of this year and then all the way through May, first week of June. Although, again, if I can jump on a live, maybe once a month here or there, then I will let you know. Otherwise, I'll do video clips from what we've been doing and what we've done. I think you'll enjoy them. They'll be briefer. I'll try to keep it so it's something you can share. But again, I'm not here to edit myself beyond recognizing that we're not all the same. So I have to make it so that, okay, I'm myself and some people like this and some people don't. And I'll try to make other things available where it's not an issue, really, right? Where it's not a question of me being myself, but just the subject is self-contained and should be harmless other than the information you agree or don't agree with. So I'll try to do the best I can in those ways. What else is going on before we get going? That's pretty much it, right? We got these holidays. So Sunday, I'll put on a couple things we're going to talk about. One will be either Christmas or holidays in general. So we'll get into holiday stuff, Christmas in particular. If you have questions or want to hear what we have to say about that, an updated discussion on Christmas and holidays, we have some on the channel. And then I have a couple other things I think you'll find interesting Sunday. I'll take a look at the chat, of course. Tonight we're hitting Athanasius, right? So we don't agree. We're not Trinitarian here. We're not Unitarian here. We're Christian witnesses of Jah here. That means that we believe in one God the Father, like one single individual God, one person, just like every other person has his own nature, right? He's an individual being like everyone else in the Bible. We don't recognize this attempt to reinterpret terms like God as having a personal only reference. That is not a distinction also in nature, distinction only in person, which is what Trinitarians, like I talked about in the last show in particular, and the clip I did of it recently on John 1:1, how Trinitarians misinterpret it. So watch that if you want more. But it's very clear what they're doing, and it's very clear what those terms mean in the Bible, biblical documents, related texts, and the first century and earlier, and then how this development through to the Trinity came about. So we're at that point, or right before it, in terms of the Council of Nicaea, where this really becomes more of a defined doctrine from the standpoint of enforcement, or at least. Again, when you look at the history of Nicaea and what followed, you do not have, it's so interesting, isn't it? We've talked about it before, mention it briefly again. People think that, Athanasius stood up, this great Christian apologist, and defended against the heretics, Arians, which we're not. In spite of what people like Sam say, right? We could tell them forever and they'll still continue to say it, right? Because they want to put us in a negative category related to beliefs that we don't hold, like creation ex nihilo, which they do, right? Either way, gets old, but we have to deal with this kind of stuff, this mislabeling, right? No, as I said, we're Christian witnesses of Jah, one God the Father. Okay, that's one God the Father. There's not like anything else going on there, right? We believe also in one Lord Jesus Christ, and he was made Lord by the Father. According to multiple texts, Philippians 2, 9 through 11, explicitly says, God exalted Jesus at his resurrection so that everyone will bow in his name and as Lord. He made him Lord to the glory of God the Father, the one God. The God he came and served, not just as a man, but in heaven, not as a man, but as a glorified spirit. We'll talk about that tonight. So if you're looking forward to a discussion of the spirit body, physical body, 1 Corinthians 15 tonight, because we're talking about Athanasius and the incarnation of the Word, right? So their whole view of this Jesus taking a body, right, is totally different than the Bible and what we believe as Christian witnesses of Jah. Like I was saying, we believe Jesus, he came to the earth, pre-existed as the Son of God, emptying himself of the form of God or divine nature, the form of a God, what it means to be a God, a spirit. And he became a man, took on flesh, what it means to become a man. Lower than the angels, lower than the spirit gods of heaven. Psalm 8:5, Hebrews 2, 7-9. Philippians 2, 5 through 8. So we don't believe Jesus retained this divine nature. They do. People like Athanasius, Trinitarians, for the most part, they believe that, again, there's a lot of doctrinal controversy, but for the most part, the belief is that Jesus has two natures, okay? That on earth, he has both a human and divine. He never stopped being divine. Okay, so when we read Athanasius, this is what you're going to be reading. This is what he means. He just became man as well. And you'll see, we're going to get into this a lot, so I'll let him say it and I'll respond. And then he died as a man, in a way we'll talk about more. But he never died as, God or this divine person that they see as also existing simultaneously as a man. But they don't see it as two persons, okay? You ask, well, why don't they see it as two persons, Greg? He's got a human nature and a divine nature, and he has opposing sets of attributes, right? Differing degrees of the same. For example, knowledge. He knows all things, does know all things. Has to be given a whole divine revelation in Revelation 1:1. Either way, they say, he knows and doesn't know all things at the same time. Because he has two natures, you see. But he's only one person. Somehow they think having two natures makes it so the nature can know something without being a person. Or not know something without being a person. Guess what, boys? Neither one is possible. You guys are stupid and you've been lying to people a long time. And we've had to deal with a lot of misrepresentation and lies by the Trinitarians and the Unitarians, but mostly the Trinitarians, and we're talking about Athanasius tonight. These people have been lying about the Bible. Okay? They've been defaming the Father, lying about his Godhead, his deity, and that of the Son, the only begotten God. They don't accept these things. They don't believe the Bible. As I talked about last show, they believe in a perverted interpretation of the Bible that they were mostly getting from other teachers, not the Bible. And if they were, it was from a Bible they rarely hadn't read, because they're mostly learning from the teachers, as Athanasius said, which we can see aren't what the Bible says. And we go by what's written as Christian witnesses of Jah. We believe Jesus gave up his divine nature, his spirit form, became a man, an actual man, was born lower than the angels, just like man was made, and then was resurrected. Not just on the third day, but after he gave his spirit back to the Father, just like Psalm says, and he said, and Father, I entrust my spirit into your hands, just like Psalm says, the spirit goes back to the God who gave it, the Spirit. Father, into your hands I entrust my spirit, not my flesh. So he was not continuing to live as a spirit. That's why it says in 1 Corinthians 15, he had to be made a life-giving spirit. He had to became. Okay, we're going to get into it more. I've gotten into it before. No one listens again. Okay, we're talking about spirit here. There is no physical form in heaven. Flesh and blood does not mean sin. That is a long ago defeated, idiotic argument. We've defeated Robert H. Gundry. We've defeated Soma in biblical theology. We've defeated all you pagans. You're just too stupid and ignorant to realize it or to remember it. So why you guys keep saying the same stupid things over and over again proves you're dishonest people, just like Athanasius. This is not a good person, as I said a moment ago. This is someone who had a lot of problems, spiritually, theologically, and psychologically. Okay? Remind you of anyone today? It should. Because we've been dealing with these people a long time. And the reason I'm reading him is to destroy his kind. Okay, we're here to eliminate Athanasius of Alexandria from the category of respectable Bible interpreters. This guy's a moron. He thinks you never refer to things you create as born. Okay, I already mentioned several other things. There's a lot more. Anyone who relies on this guy for his biblical understanding is gone. Okay? Most of the time, these people don't even know what he fully believed, right? Like I said before, they often lie and portray Athanasius as someone who's like this great defender, who changed everything and championed orthodoxy and got rid of the heretics. That is so far from reality. It's like their paganism, right? Like the way they misinterpret words that never mean what they claim they mean. It's like this wholesale theological gaslighting that's been dumped on everybody by the dragon. And that's what happened with Constantine and all these pagans. We can easily determine that based on what's written. It's simple, actually. And when you look at the way they interpret things that are written, right, it's comedy. And when you actually talk to them about the things they say, you can see they're just comedy. Most of these people are comedy. Okay, that's why they never address anything, or when they do, they don't. Or they'll kill themselves and cut you off in 10 minutes after you've destroyed them in front of everybody, and then run and lie like you didn't, right? It's just a joke. Either way, we're dealing with Athanasius and his kind. We're not here to be kind. Okay, we're supposed to hate what is bad. Now you tell me, what's worse? Lying about the Father, the Son, or the Holy Spirit? Or all of them? Or someone who doesn't know anything about those three and does something perverse? Answer that. So while we don't want to be unnecessarily harsh, I'm not here to pull any punches with people who for almost 2,000 years, well, 1700 or so, have been cited and used to wrongly influence people about what the master and his early followers teach and about the God of the Bible. This is not a good person. This is someone who acted in horrible ways, who was defeated multiple times, right? It's like a joke, right? The idea that this guy somehow established this, defense against heresy that lingered on is just absurd. And what he did do in many ways was just incorrect when you line up the facts against what he says. So let's do that. Let's get right to it. It's our last Athanasius Read and Refute show for a while. So we spent a little time. I had to make sure the syncing was okay. And then also just kind of build things up to where we are now. So let me just do this real quick here. Bring up Athanasius. We left off at like 22. We only read like 3. Take that down. We only read like 3 sections of his on the incarnation of the word last time, but I talked a lot about Philo, a little bit about Justin, and then Origen, and then John 1:1, and what Athanasius and these people mean. Texts like John 1:1, the word was God. So now we're going to read, we'll try to get it through as many as we can, but we're just going to read straight through like we usually do. And then, I'll stop here and there. We'll read up a couple texts and talk about some of the things he says. So you're going to like this. Some good resurrection stuff, because again, this ties in directly with the incarnation of the word. So we're in the Trinitarian elements of Athanasius, but we're mostly focused on that in relation to the incarnation and his belief about the divine person of the word, or his Platonic abstraction becoming the man Jesus in the way he understands it. To be more Trinitarian again than, as we talked about last time, Philo or Justin or Origen, but he still has this kind of Platonic metaphysic that's guiding his view of Jesus' relationship with God and how he's the word and wisdom and power. So see last episode, or the clip I did from it, for a lot more on that. Let's see. What's that? Yeah. Oh, okay. So it's coming up right now, and we'll start reading. Does it look okay? It still looks okay. So either way, remember, so this is not our friend, okay? Athanasius, even though he says some things, and they're not like I said earlier, it's not like every single thing he says is bad, or that he never even, I'm not here to judge him with finality. Now, I believe he's a false teacher and a liar, and he was used to champion dragon theology, but I wasn't there, and I don't have the inner understanding that the master does to understand his full motivation the way I would need to do anything more than just say, no, this guy's nuts, okay? Don't listen to him. Not worth it. The 20% or so, 15% that he says that's correct, it's not worth it. Unless you're going to be like me and you're in these extended theological discussions, and you sort of have to have more knowledge about these people and these teachings, you're not going to find a lot of benefit here. It's not going to help you understand one God the Father better, or Jesus as his firstborn son in a spiritual sense, or even how to treat each other the way you want to be treated, right? Like we talked about earlier, in his kind of bizarre view of women and the accounts involving them. Anyway, let's bring up Athanasius. I'm not sure why my face isn't showing there. It's showing there. I wonder if I should do that. Well, maybe I'll just, I'll have to check why this is happening. But not a big deal. I'll just read, so I'll first what I'll do is I'll do the reading. Do the reading. And then when I stop, I'll just come back like this because I'll have to check one of the settings. It looks like the timing's good, but now I got another setting thing I got to adjust because I was gone for a while. I don't know. Something happened. Okay, so let's do the reading. Let's get that going. Okay. I believe we read 21, did we not? Yes, we did. Okay. So if you want to catch up, of course, you can watch the prior shows, but we're going to pick up at 22. We are going to break after I read 22, and we're going to read a text from John 10 that fits perfectly. So let's go ahead and do 22. This is Athanasius, Incarnation on the Word. We're in Nicene, Post-Nicene Fathers, online at ccel.org, section 22. It's the chapter heading. It's not part of the actual text, although some people get confused. So it's not really relevant. It might be helpful in some way to you, but again, you might get thoughts that are agreeable or disagreeable to you. Who knows? The main thing is, what does the subject text say, right? Kind of big. Let's just leave it like that. Okay, section 22. Remember, incarnation, we're going to get some resurrection stuff, and there's Trinity stuff. The divine nature's still here, right? That never leaves Jesus and the Trinity. But it were better, one might say, to have hidden from the designs of the Jews. He's talking about Jesus and, why he became a man and why he died the way he did. But it were better, one might say, to have hidden from the designs of the Jews that he might guard his body altogether from death. Now let such an one be told that this too was unbefitting the Lord. For it was not fitting for the word of God being life. Now remember, Athanasius probably doesn't have the same view that you do if you're like me, of Jesus as the life that was with God. John writes in his letters especially, and in his first opening of his gospel, how Jesus was life that was with God, eternal life with God. But Jesus explains that he was given that life, that the Father's the actual source of life. But he then gives that life to the Son in himself, which is eternal life. So he's that eternal life when he was created, given life in himself. He's that eternal life that was with the Father that became a man. The Word, the Spirit being, that's also called life, eternal life. In the Bible, and like John, Word, right? Word is explicitly stated to be a name in Revelation 19. It's not, like I talked about in last show, an abstraction. It's not a word, an actual spoken word or a thought, right? That's why or same with wisdom, right? Jesus isn't God's attribute of wisdom. He's not his word. He's not his reason. He's not his power, right? He's not his life. He's his own spirit being. He's a son of God. He's the Son of God. First one, the firstborn, the only begotten, through and in whom all things were made. He's given life in himself that the Father already has. If they're sharing the same nature eternally, one of my unanswerables, that wouldn't be necessary. Because they're sharing the same nature like you pagans tell us, and like Athanasius believes. You can't give life to something that already has that life. And if you're sharing the same nature, you have the same life. Life isn't an attribute of like knowledge. It's just you alive, right? One nature doesn't have more than one type of life. It's just alive or not. Now, if you have a Siamese twin, one might know more than the other, but they're not more alive than the other, right? Of course, that's just the best analogy for their perverted Trinity God, a fake God. The actual biblical God is just one person, right? Any separate person is a separate being, unless you're talking about a Siamese twin being, right? Which couldn't be a father and the son in the first place. And they contradict that with their eternal generation, which is impossible in the first place. It's just a way for them to not believe what they say they believe, that he's generated. Oh, but he's eternally generated. Oh, so you don't really believe he's generated because that's what generated means. Oh, and every single instance, by the way, right? Except the one you assume, and thus beg the question. Good for you, but not really, right? So back to the text. Unbelievable stuff, what we have to deal with, huh? That's right here, too. Now, let such an one be told that this was too unbefitting. Okay, for it was not as fitting for the word of God being life, right? So he has a more abstracted Platonic sense of Jesus as life, but maybe in some ways closer to what we're talking about at times, but not really, right? Because he's got this whole eternal person abstracted as the word of God in a Platonic sense. Whereas, again, those are just titles. Word, wisdom, power. These are just titles for a spirit being in the Bible who has power, who has his own knowledge, who has his own reason, right? Has his own life, given it, by the way. His knowledge is different. Everything. He says himself, everything has been given to him by the Father. What else do you need to know, right? How much more temporal can you get? Oh, he's eternally given it, Greg. No, you're just being dumb again and contradicting what you say you believe and therefore not believing anything. How about that? It's so interesting. Either way, when you actually look at how these words are used, they never mean what they say, whether it's God, generation, right? Begotten, not made, right? Yeah, well, that's the same thing, but have fun with that, right? Believe what you want with regard to Plato and all these abstractions that have nothing to do with the Bible. No, he's actually just the Son of God who's called wisdom and word. That's a name. And yeah, no, he speaks his own words, has his own wisdom, and God has his own wisdom, by the way, right? God's wisdom, his actual attribute of wisdom, which doesn't actually exist as a separate thing, like you guys sometimes talk as if this is the case. Your energies and powers is not, no, that's not biblical. That's your paganism. That's your Philo and later paganism. That's nothing to do with the Bible. No, these are spirits, sons of God, flames of fire, angels. Do you guys read the Bible? Do you go beyond what's written? Yet no for the first one, yes for the second one, right? Or if you read, you don't understand because you don't change from paganism. Right? No, in the Bible, these are all spirits, sons of God, angels, like I said. They have all these qualities and attributes. They are not those attributes. They are not those powers, energies of God. That's just God. Right. And you have no business saying anything else because it's not written. Good for you, but not. Back to the text of Athanasius, the not accurate teacher of the Bible, right? First, let me check, though. We could have a collapse. Sorry. Did I have that? Hopefully I didn't have that long. Either way, I may have had the mic muted for a minute or two. I apologize. Sometimes it gets a little hard to manage. If that's the case, I'll delete if it's a problem. Either way, I try not to do that because I want you guys to have your comments there. But let me check and see if we have any problems with these comments. People going insane, you know. We said hi to a lot of people, right? Betsy, Unfinished Mystery, Ken, Joker. We'll get back to Athanasius in just a second, but I have to do this. Single cell organism, good to see you. Yeah, it's over for Watchtower. Hopefully you can get people out. You know, I know it's not easy, Watchtower people. I know you're going through a lot. But you did this to yourselves, you know. And I had to take myself out. What you're having a hard time doing, I had to do. And then just deal with it and keep going. And now you guys are still dealing with it, right? Like I told you guys. The longer you wait, the worse it gets. Or you just won't. You'll just lose more time. But for some people, it's okay, right? Not everybody changes their mind. Some people, that's just what they want. So let them have it. But some of them torture themselves, right? They just can't make a decision to save their life. But, you know, if you find people like that, you got to get away from them. They're constantly changing their mind. What does Paul say? It's unsteady, unstable. You can't be around people who are constantly just waffling, right? Do it if you want. Yes. Well, user, Alloy, I have videos on that. All you have to do is type Colossians 1:15, like I was saying earlier. And, okay, thanks, Ken. I appreciate that. Just a few seconds. Good. User, it looks like it's small, sometimes hard to read. User so1 UE whatever, EF 7B, I'm sorry. He asked about Colossians 1:15 through 17, what it means, and I have videos on this. Those exact verses, just type that in at my channel. Little magnifying glass search at my homepage, right on the main menu in the middle. They'll come right up, okay? You'll get all the information. We won't have to divert to deal with it. Right, Revelation 3:14, I got those too. So you're all set, man. This is like old stuff. Colossians 1:15 through 17, that's easy. They're just lying to you and they don't understand when all means all. They're starting to realize that it doesn't mean all, or they want it to mean it. But they still have a problem. They keep lying about firstborn. They keep saying it doesn't involve temporality, and that's all it ever involves. Even if it's for something figurative. Firstborn can be used that way, user. But it's always for something temporal, not for God, right? So it's crazy stuff. Anyways, search at the channel, okay? If you still have questions, just type them in those videos and I'll respond. And I'll know you watched it and I'll say, okay, well, you know, I either said this in the video or maybe I missed something and I'll put it down. No problem. You're welcome. Okay, everything looks good here. It doesn't look like I'm missing. Okay, so I can't see everything. I'm gonna get back to the reading though so we don't lose a lot of time. Kind of got to hear, right? We're talking about him being the life. We kind of got off on that and this whole kind of continuing from last week, how they see him in these ways, right? So when they call him the word, life, power, wisdom, especially, okay? Like the user, when they talk about wisdom, user and everyone else, they don't mean the same thing we do. They don't mean the same thing the Bible does. Well, they mean an attribute, which is a meaning of the Bible, but they think that it's God's actual attribute, okay? I know it sounds weird because it is. You have to understand the Platonic relationship and how they see these eternal abstractions, the equivalent to Plato's theory of forms, basically, and God as the good, or, you know, these forms as attributes in the mind of God in ways that allow them to be eternal so that they can identify Jesus as these abstractions and also be eternal. And then when you try to point out that that's not what the Bible's using those terms for, these not actually existing attributes, right? These are just formal distinctions we make about things we see in a person. They're not actual parts of a person. Let alone, something like these energies or powers. It's so weird how they are sometimes, but they're following Platonism, right? So that's why User and everyone else, you're going to hear them say things. And you're going to be like, what does this mean, right? Like you're saying, Colossians, they say it means that listen to what I'm teaching you, and especially watch last week's show, a part of which I clipped yesterday, that gets into this kind of a little bit more. It's still hard. Okay, this is not going to be easy because what they're doing. But last show really breaks it down, I think, pretty good. How they're the only way to put it is they're lying to you. Okay? They're telling you God doesn't mean what it means. They're telling you person doesn't mean what it means. They just want you to think a person as not an actual being with a nature, right? Just think of the person that has that nature. Okay, that's all they want you to think of when you are confronted with the whole person, right? There is no separation of the person that has a nature and the nature in the Bible, unless it's dead, right? Or unless it's just speaking generally like spirit from spirit, like Jesus in John 3. Right? He says, what's born from spirit is spirit. What's born from flesh is flesh. Right? So he's using them just in a general sense, but for specific instances of those natures being born from each other, right? It's right in front of you. It's the master talking, the one who would know both of those better than anyone. And you still don't listen. What's born? What's a spirit? Is it eternal? Duh, right? Philo, Platonism, Athanasius, go, right? Councils, creeds. What? Bible? Where'd you get that? Paganism, right? Pray to Mary. Go to war. Where's William? Right? That's what they do. Although I do like William's thumbnails, right? I'm addicted to William's thumbnails at this point. It's terrible, right? He's crazy, right? He's blown Sam away on the thumbnails. It's over, Sam. You had your day. William has like a movie going on in his thumbnails, right? You run William's thumbnails together, like in the last few months, it's like a movie, right? He's always the butcher, right? Just butchering the Bible like he does. Oh, well. Anyway, let's get back to the reading. Athanasius. Oh, yeah. So I want to go there. Oh, yeah, because I don't have that, huh? Okay, so we dealt with this life, and then through it, this whole word, wisdom, how these are not attributes or abstractions, either attributes of God or an abstraction that Jesus is. He just has these things, and like God is love, he so embodies them that he's called them. Why is he called the Word? Oh, I don't know, right? Maybe it's because the only words he ever says, according to him, are what he learned. Hello, temporality. John 7, 16 through 17, it's over. Revelation 1:1, it's over. Right, no, he speaks everything and only what the Father told him, and he learned from the Father, the one God, right? The one who gave him a whole revelation to tell everybody, hey, my God and your God, and you're going to get the name of my God. What God? Praise Jah God. Revelation 19, Revelation 3:12. It's over, right? In any case, we must continue until it's officially over. It's like Babylon having fallen but not being destroyed yet. It's coming. Either way, right? We have resisted the pagans, so let's get to the reading. I kind of broke off there, but just remember that, right? God embodies love. He's not the feeling of love, right? No, he's just so loving. He sends his son, John 3:16, right? He makes people in his image, gives them everything, right? So he's love in that way. Jesus says only what the Father says. He's the Word in that way. He's the wisdom that God used to create all things. So he knows all these things. He's the one who helped put them together. And he's the fulfillment, wisdom, and power of God's plan, not just involving him, but as Paul also says in 1 Corinthians, the gospel, the good news is God's power. That's why Jesus is called it. Okay, he's not actually power. He's not actually God's ability to move or project anything, an effect. No, but he can use people like he does the Son and other angels and people and his own spirit. So just remember those things. When we read them in Athanasius especially, he's not thinking what we're thinking most of the time or even ever in large part, right? So he's saying, now let such a one be told that this was too unbefitting the Lord, for it was not fitting for the word. People want to know, right? Why didn't he just hide from the Jews altogether, right? Guard his body altogether so he didn't have to go through this type of death. He gets into it more, the whole kind of crucifixion or dying on the stake, however you want to see it. Why did this have to happen? He's addressing that. He says, it's not fitting for the word of God being the life to inflict death on himself on his own body. So neither was it suitable to fly from death offered by others, but rather to follow it up unto destruction, for which reason he naturally neither laid aside his body of his own accord, nor, again, fled from the Jews when they took counsel against him. Now, this part right here, did this stand out to you at all? He naturally neither laid aside his body of his own accord. We'll come back to that. Nor again fled the Jews when they took counsel against him. But this did not show weakness on the word's part, but on the contrary showed him to be Savior in life, and that he both awaited death to destroy it and hasted to accomplish the death offered him for the salvation of all. And besides, the Savior came to accomplish not his own death, but the death of men, whence he did not lay aside his body by a death of his own. Come back to that. For he was life and had none, but received that death which came from men, in order perfectly to do away with this when it met him in his own body. Again, from the following also one might see the reasonableness of the Lord's body meeting this end. The Lord was especially concerned for the resurrection of the body, which he was set to accomplish. For what he was to do was to manifest it as a monument of victory over death, and to assure all of his having effected the blotting out of corruption. Now this, I agree, I think that is definitely why, he manifested the actual body in which he died, and why it was important to have it raised before it saw corruption, because that would be a disgrace. And you'll see more how he talks about it, and I agree, right? I think there's an element here where his worthiness wouldn't permit the kind of corruption to take place, so you'd see these marks of decay, which happens after the third day. But to see the actual wound marks right before they begin to decay would be useful as actual evidence. They would know that's who he is. Whereas if he just appears like he did with Paul in light, or with Stephen at God's right hand, those things followed his physical appearances, which we'll talk about more in a moment, after he raised up the body in which he died, by showing those marks to people like Thomas and others, speaking in ways that they recognized when he didn't have the same body, right? Because they didn't know it was him sometimes. But he did certain things, like the way he cooked, the way he talked, depending on who he was with. Then they knew, right? Then their hearts were burning, they said, right? It wasn't they saw him and recognized right away. These things he was saying Now, to some extent, you might say that was kept from them. But the fact is, he's clear. There's no evidence that he's in the same body that's showing the same wound marks and ways. The voice is different. It suggests a different form even after his resurrection. But he definitely raised up that body, right? We all believe that. We believe he was resurrected as a life-giving spirit before then, which we'll get to in a moment. But then on the third day, raised up that body for that reason, at least in part, like he says here, to provide evidence and assurance of what he had accomplished. So they knew it was really him, not a demon or some other kind of display that wouldn't necessarily indicate, oh yeah, the same one who died, this is who this is. So it is important, the physical manifestation of that body. All right. And of the corruption of their bodies from thenceforward, the incorruption, as a gauge of which and a proof of the resurrection in store for all, he has preserved his own body incorrupt. Now, anything in relation to this, meaning the physical body, is what he's showing them to indicate. That's what they're going to get, right? This physical body that he's showing them after the third day. If any meaning in what we're reading in Athanasius, that's what he was doing, is wrong, right? That's not the body he has in heaven. That's not the body we're going to have in heaven. And it's not the body explicitly described in contrast to the physical body like Jesus showed on the third day and afterward in 1 Corinthians 15. We'll get to it. So this is where a lot of them go wrong, right? They don't understand the resurrection at all. They don't understand God. Jesus, they're gone. So they have all these traditions and ways of reading the Bible that just make it impossible for them to make sense of it. They have their own traditions and ways. That's what they make sense of, okay? So they can't comprehend that, no. Like, if you want to see the kind of body he has, why don't you just read how John describes it in Revelation 1 and 2, right? It's right there for you. Oh, and the descriptions are so explicit, they actually match the exact same descriptions given in the Old Testament for these same types of spirit beings with very little of any difference. And the difference being between lightning and fire and in the cases I'm thinking of. That's it, right? That's not a physical body they have at all. That's the whole point of what Paul wrote. They miss it all, okay? These are blind as perverted bat people. They're dragon churchers, okay? These are not real Christians. Some of them may be nice. They may be misled and be following God according to the law of their heart in spite of the dragon, like Jesus and Paul said. And people that Jesus encountered, like the widow and Nicodemus, there's differences. So we're not here to judge everybody, but I wouldn't be there if I could help it, right? So these are not our friends. You need to be very careful with all these Christians. They don't like you. No, they really don't. If you don't agree with them at all, the dragon has made it so that Christianity has a hard time staying together or maintaining a unity of even two or more, the very number we need to do more, because he does this kind of thing. Confuses everybody, makes you think you got to believe this, you got to believe that. No, this council, this creed, this church, this group, well, this interpretation. No, we just go based on what's written, and we take the main things like we do, 1, 2, and 3. We leave everything else up to you and me, because that's how we're going to be judged ultimately. So what they've done is they've just artificially placed upon us these doctrines and beliefs from people like Athanasius, who were terrible people, horrible interpreters, and bad examples in many ways, right? Just not at all like how they present him. So it's just all fake. It's all part of the Dragon Church. And everything they present, especially in the 4th century, not as much before the Council of Nicaea, but yeah, it was definitely happening. And then thereafter, they just kept changing everything. And there was no uniform understanding of the Trinity for a long time. And even today, right, they're broken and fractured with their whole schism over the filioque, right? And these guys are crazy. All their idols and paganism and gold and hats and statues. It's just out of control, right? Women aren't even supposed to be wearing that. We got all these people dressed up just like the scribes and Pharisees in the Bible, thinking they're holy people, when they're some of the worst people you can ever imagine. Lying about God, venerating icons and statues. Are you crazy? You got to be kidding me. Is this the kind of stuff we're faced with and told this is the right thing? Is out of control. And this is why you got to be strong, because the dragon knows people are susceptible to group pressure, family pressure, and thought pressure. Yeah, no, he knows that if he just tells you something in a certain way, you'll probably believe it. Don't believe me? Read Genesis. That's all it took. And quite honestly, that's all it takes for most people. It's unfortunate, and we all get more than one chance. So don't feel like you've blown it if you've blown it. Just understand so you don't blow it. The next time you get a chance, just do what's right. We're going to have to suffer a little bit, right? Do you want to be popular? Okay. Do you want to follow these people? You want to follow these people right here? Go ahead and do it. You want to have this lineage? Is this your church? You want to have the lineage of the Dragon Church, Athanasius, Constantine, all these people? Go for it. It wouldn't be what I recommend, but I'm not here to make you grow. I've already planted, I've already watered, and you already know the same things I do. They're right here. If then once more his body has fallen sick and the world had been sundered from it inside of all, it would have been unbecoming that he who healed the diseases of others should suffer his own instrument to waste in sickness. For how could his driving out the diseases of others have been believed if in his own temple he fell sick in him? If it believed in if his own temple fell sick in him. Yeah. For either he had been mocked as unable to drive away diseases, or if he could, but did not, he would be thought insensible toward others also. Okay, let's go back up to a couple things. Remember, look at this part right here. We'll get back to this whole resurrection thing in a minute. But this whole, he did not lay aside his body by a death of his own. He naturally neither laid aside his body of his own accord nor fled the Jews. But I'm focused on he did not lay aside his body of his own accord. That's not true. Now, there's more to it, but just so we're not confused, because he said it twice. And, we need to make sure we understand what the Bible says. And as we know, Athanasius didn't rarely he had a copy of the Bible, it seems, until later. And at this point, especially, he's basically going based on what he's learned from the other fathers that he accepts. And he doesn't even have their writings. So either way, just keep that in mind. But since he said this several times, you can see where the things they say, they just don't match the text. Look, right? That's not what the Bible teaches, okay? The Bible teaches, I'm going to show you right now, we're going to go to the Bible Hub, that Jesus did lay it aside of his own, right? It's like explicit. And like we've seen already in Athanasius, our earlier shows, we've been doing this a few years, 2 to 3 years, because like I said, I had earlier several series and kind of got off of one onto another, but I'll try to do more. We'll finish up at least the incarnation of the word going forward before we get anything else series-wise. And so Bible Hub, though, let's go to John. Might be a little big. John 10, right? So what is he talking about? Why is he saying he naturally neither laid aside his body of his own accord? He did not lay aside his body by a death of his own. When in John 10, he says something totally different. Verse 16, we'll just look at the parallel Greek column. And other sheep I have, this is Jesus talking, which not are of the fold this. Those also it behooves me to bring. And the voice of me they will hear. And there will be one flock with one shepherd. Verse 17. Because of this, me, the Father, loves. Because I laid down the life of me, that again I might take it up. So he definitely is saying right here that he is the one, right? Let's go back to Athanasius. He talks about his body, right? Because remember, and as you're going to see more in a moment, Athanasius doesn't believe that Jesus laid aside his life, right? He just sees it as the body. He uses the word for soul, but, right, psyche, but that could be body, include the body or not. Either way, Athanasius doesn't believe Jesus laid aside his divine life, okay? Again, that's why I repeat this, because it gets confusing, because we're like, well, Jesus died, God doesn't die, and so, resurrection, he raised up as a spirit. No, they think he never died as a spirit or as a divine being or divine person, right? Their own meaning. They think he only died as a man or his body, basically. It gets weird, right? Because again, there's no, if you have a human nature and a spirit nature, you're two people. There's no such thing as, you can take on the appearance of a human nature like angels do. You can take on the form, like the temporary, like manifest a form. But that I'm talking about like actually owning, like being born, like Jesus was, like we are. There's no owning your own nature, or like a spirit, right? What's born from spirit is spirit, what's born from flesh is flesh. So that's what happens. Okay, that's what means be born from spirit. Same as born from flesh. That just like we all understand being born, right? We're not retarded, or are we? Because some people, the majority, appear to be. And why is that? I think the dragon. The dragon has confused people so much we just look stupid, or many of us. In any case, on this issue, the Trinitarians are the ones who are telling us he either didn't die at all in any real way, just the physical body, and he just kept living as a person with his divine nature and then resurrected his body, or he died as a man, like a person, but he also had this divine person as God. So that's two people. No matter what, that you can say all you want and no, it's not. Yes. If you have you own a nature as a person, there's one. You own a totally different nature as a person. There's two. Oh, and they actually both know different things? Right. It's over, okay? So you guys are just stupid. Your whole council, you guys went so far beyond what's written. You kept trying to make sense out of things you weren't supposed to be trying to figure out. Because you don't know what the hell you're talking about. The only thing you can say you know because of the accepted authority is the Bible. And you guys go so far beyond that, it's crazy to talk about. So it's your fault that you guys chose this Platonic and other metaphysical related route to expand on what the Bible teaches and then require everyone else believe what you believe, even though you don't all believe the same things and you're all just really crazy, in so many ways, and you just don't go based on what's written, right? Instead, what we get this weirdness where Jesus dies only as his physical body, or as a man, but he has another divine spirit person that doesn't die. Again, that's two people, and so you guys are dumb or liars or both, and we just have to resist the gaslighting everyone. Okay, it's the same with that creation ex nihilo. They're not just gonna collapse, right? Sam and others have collapsed, like the Babylon has fallen way, but the full, complete disintegration is pending. They're not going to just volunteer that they're pagan liars and have been perverting the message about God and Jesus for almost 2,000 years. They're not going to do that. Most of them are not going to do that. Most people can barely leave Watchtower, right? Most can't leave Mormonism. It's not about the doctrine in most cases with people. It just isn't, everybody. It's about what's convenient. It's about whether or not you're going to lose your friends, your family, money, right? And these are important, right? Who wants to lose this? Nobody. Guess what? Dragon doesn't care. Dragon does not care. He's going to make you suffer to get to the master. It's just that simple. And that's why these beliefs that are so simple have become so complex, and they just look ridiculous, right? Just think of what we've been just talking about, the way they think Jesus died. Like he didn't actually die as a person, just as his physical bodies. We're going to read more. Or if he did die as a man only and he has this other person, but it's not two people. They're just using word magic on you. It's spellcraft. It's sorcery. It is. It's like what Satan did to Eve in the Garden of Eden. It's just words. It's word magic. It hypnotizes you. The lie does something to you. Contradiction does something to us. And they just keep doing it. They just keep shoving this shit in our face, whether it's in the movies, whether it's in these teachings. That's what the dragon does. How does he mislead the whole world? He confuses you. He contradicts things. He lies. Gaslights you. He's been doing the same thing the whole time. He's really good at it. And his followers do the exact same thing, do they not? They do. They ignore all this stuff and just pretend like it's not happening. What? What did Greg say? Who? What? Where? They just then repeat the exact same things as if I never said anything. What? Flesh and blood? That just means sin. I mean, physical body. No, you're a dork and a fag. Are you ever going to learn? No, probably not. Just like a dork and a fag. Dorks are dorks. Fags don't learn how to use their penis or their anus. Pretty stupid if you ask me. And if you feel that compelled to use your penis or your anus that way, good for you. I don't recommend it. Either way, we're talking about the Bible, right? And those things come up. So either you're prepared for that stuff, or probably you shouldn't be talking about the Bible. There's a lot in it. And some of you should just probably not talk about it. You should be living it. For he was life and had none, but received that death. Okay, we were talking. So I wanted to share the text. Yeah, no. I lay it down, the life of me, right? It's Cain. That again I might take it up. Again. Right, so there's a couple ways we could look at that. I don't want to get off on it, but we'll get to it when we get to 1 Corinthians 15 a little bit more. This whole, what kind of life he received or was made before he took up his physical body. Verse 18, no one takes it from me. Okay, right? So Athanasius says he did not lay aside his body by a death of his own. He naturally neither laid aside his body of his own accord when he says, the verse we just read, verse 17, I do lay it of my own, right? Because of this, the Father loves me, I lay down the life of me, that again I might take it or receive it. Lambano, the term there in those texts, it's translated take or receive, can mean either one. So I don't want to get off on it necessarily right now. It's not that critical, but important to know that. All right. So verse 18, no one takes it from me. Okay. So it's real clear. This is him. Okay. This is not accurate. Or, he's going to talk about it a little bit more, but these statements on their own simply do not match the statements of the master. No one takes it from me. I lay it down to myself. Authority I have. The one God is the one who permits Jesus to receive his life again. So, the one God has control over everything, period. He said no one takes it from him. He lays it of his own. But by that, he didn't mean to include the Father, did he? No, he went on to make that very clear, right? So no one doing such and such thing doesn't mean no one does it, does it? No, you actually have to read the whole sentence, not just the terms you want to focus on that you don't actually believe once you read the whole sentence. It's weird, everybody. Anyway, so we have that where Athanasius has failed, and more in the resurrection. But let's just move on, right? So let's get to 23, right? Necessity of a public death. That's the for the doctrine of the resurrection. That's the chapter heading. So here's the text. But even if without any disease, without any pain, he has hidden his body away privily and by himself in a corner or in a desert place or in a house or anywhere, and afterwards suddenly appeared and said that he had been raised from the dead, he would have seemed on all hands to be telling idle tales, and what he said about the resurrection would have been all the more discredited, as there were no one at all to witness his death. And I agree with that. I think that's, that's a good, the idea of having witnesses to an event like this is obviously important, mostly for them, right? Because we don't get to see it. But the power of the testimony from the people who did, that has an effect. Now, sometimes people lie, of course, and we got to be careful. These are very unique events in a very unique time and setting where it's not, to me, likely all of the things related to Jesus could have happened in that time and in that place, after having been predicted as they were based on the text we have predating those events involving Jesus. It just seems very unlikely to me. So I do think there's this credibility that had to be established with the witnesses, that regardless of the fact that we weren't there to see it and verify their witness, they were so affected, the people that saw these things and heard Jesus. To me, that's why we keep hearing about it all. It just is not possible to get rid of. Okay. So he's right there. So it's not like, again, like I said, he doesn't make any points or see everything. He's got the wrong framework, and of course, he's got a lot of other problems too. And he's pointed to by a lot of these people who use him today to condemn us when he's the one, along with them, who should be condemned. Okay, we're going beyond what's written. Now, death must precede resurrection. That's true. And as it would be no resurrection, did not death precede? So that if the death of his body had taken place anywhere in secret, see, again, we're just dealing with death of the body so far, right? The death not being apparent, right? It didn't say lay down his body. Now, in John 2, he does talk about the temple of his body. His body's involved in the suke, the soul, lay down my life, my soul. So I'm not trying to say that necessarily, because again, this is like what Trinitarians do. They try to differentiate the abstraction from the physical or the containing element, in this case, the nature, right? So we're talking about an abstraction like life, but it's contained by a body of spirit or flesh. It's never away from the nature. There's no such thing as a life that doesn't have a nature, right? Its own nature. Unless, again, it's gone to God and he has to give it again with a new body just like Paul says. That's why he had to return the Spirit to God. He was dead, Trinitarians. That is okay. That's the whole point of the price he paid, that he actually died. Death means, just like Psalm 104 says, the spirit returns to the God who gave it, and the body returns to the dust from which it came. I'm pretty sure that was Psalm 104. We'll check in a minute. It's definitely from the Psalms, though. I think 104. We've talked about it many times. Just so many Psalms. So that's what Jesus is saying, okay? I'm giving you my spirit. That's exactly what the Psalms that he sang with his disciples, we're going to look it up, say that happens when a person dies. The body goes back to the earth from which it came. The spirit goes back to the God from which it came. All things came out of the Father. Jesus was the firstborn Son of God. What's born from spirit and spirit, it's over. Right? It's all in the Bible. It's all contextual. It's all interpreted according to correct principles without importing later doctrine or teaching or irrelevant philosophies and ways of thinking. Let me just get that text. We'll bring it up real quick so we can make it very clear. One of these words wasn't as frequent as I thought it would be to bring it up in my search, but I got it here. Okay, there might be one other text here that we could look at. Oh no, okay, that's a different one. So it is Psalm, yes, 104. Oh, well, actually, there's two. Psalm 104 and then Ecclesiastes. So let's do one. Let's do this real quickly. Because this is going to tie into our 1 Corinthians 15, what Athanasius says about the resurrection, what he's talking about right now. So let's do this right now. Psalm 104, 29 first. Let me bring you guys back up. Psalm 104. So again, he keeps talking about the death of the body, right? Death of his body. He doesn't believe Jesus died in his spirit. Okay, that's very important. No Trinitarian believes that, right? They all believe he only died, basically his body or as a man. And that's what they mean, because they don't really know what to make of this whole man as a person versus the body, when again, it's just man who has a spirit and a body. They separate it, though, when it comes to the persons of the Trinity, so it creates problems for them elsewhere, like right here. But in Psalm 104, right, one of the important texts for us, when you give them, they gather in, you open your hand, they are filled with good. Psalm 104:29, you hide your face. They are troubled. You take away their breath or spirit, ruach, as a form of ruach. You take away their spirit, they die. And to dust, and to their dust return. Okay, so this is what goes to the ground, the body, back to the ground, like we're going to read in a minute from Ecclesiastes. The spirit, God takes away. That's what goes back to God when they die. Now, when they're created, he sends forth his spirit. Psalm 104:30. You send forth your spirit, they are created. So when he sent forth his spirit at Jesus' conception, Jesus was created in Mary's womb. Begotten. Created. Same thing. Send forth your spirit, they are created, and you renew the face of the earth. Okay. So, these Psalms very clearly teach, do they not? When you die, your spirit goes back to God, and when you're created, he sends forth his spirit. So one last text to reinforce this point. Ecclesiastes 12:7. Very important for what we're going to read and have been reading in Athanasius regarding the body that Jesus was in, that he says died, but he doesn't really understand that Jesus as a person died, which is what death is, right? So incredible. Ecclesiastes 12:7, and let's see, was it 12:6? Do we need 6? Remember your creator. Okay, so we get to 7. And will return the dust to the earth as it was, and the spirit, ruach, form of ruach, will return to the God who gave it. Okay, so we have Solomon and the Psalms teaching very clearly, like doing the most inspired writer, right? Solomon being given like just massive wisdom and spirit and knowledge from God. The Psalms being the most inspired form of praise to Jah. Both telling us God sends forth his spirit, people are made. When we die, our spirit goes back to him. He takes it. He's the one who gave it. Jesus says when he dies, Father, into your hands, what? We all know this. No need to look it up, right? It's not contestable. I entrust my spirit. The exact things we're told in those texts happens when you die. Okay. So what happens when the spirit dies? That's the whole point of dying. The body dies too. The spirit is actually the thing that makes the body start to die when it leaves. So they just don't understand these things, everybody. They have a whole different concept of metaphysics that doesn't fit with the Bible. By metaphysics, I mean non-physical, right? So spiritual. So when it comes to your spirit, the thing that's immaterial, we don't see, but we know is there because the Bible and other things that outside of it, like, the difference between us being alive and dead and what's there and what's not there. There are ways we can argue for the existence of something like what the Bible calls spirit, but we'll accept this, so we don't have to do that here. But the fact is, they don't understand what happens when Jesus dies. They think he never died the way the Bible teaches he died, like as a spirit. And his physical body died too, but was raised up before the third day saw corruption. But his spirit died and went to the Father like everybody else's, which is why he said that. If he was still alive, there would be no point in saying that. What would be the point, Trinitarians, of saying, Father, into your hands I entrust my spirit, when your spirit, you're your spirit, that's you. So, and that's not dying, and you're just still remaining as God, like you guys tell us. So what is this entrusting? What are you talking about? Nothing happened to the spirit, you guys say. Just the body. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. It's so ridiculous, right? It's just like gone in so many ways. All right. So that's established as we get closer to 1 Corinthians. Okay, so the death of his body had taken place anywhere in secret, the death not being apparent nor taking place before witnesses. His resurrection too had been hidden and without evidence. Or why, while when he had risen, he proclaimed the resurrection, should he cause his death to take place in secret? Or why, while he drove out evil spirits in the presence of all and made the man blind from his birth recover his sight and changed the water into wine, that by these means he might be believed to be the word of God? he should not manifest his mortal nature as incorruptible in the presence of all, that he might be believed himself to be the life? It's a long question, I know. A series of questions, kind of, but either way, right? So he's again getting to this whole question of, why go through this extent of this mortal process? Why not just manifest it as incorruptible in the presence of all? Or how were his disciples that boldness in speaking of the resurrection? Were they not able to say that he first died? Or how could they believe saying that death had first taken place and then resurrection, had they not had as witness of his death the men before whom they spoke with boldness? Like I was talking about earlier as well. Let me just make sure I got this part right here. Yeah, no, he's asking the question. Okay. For if, even as it was when his death and resurrection had taken place in the sight of all, the Pharisees of that day would not believe, but compelled even those who had seen the resurrection to deny it. Why, surely if these things had happened in secret, how many pretexts for disbelief would they have devised? That's true. Or how could the end of death and the victory over it be proved unless, challenging it before the eyes of all, he had shown it to be dead, annulling for the future by the incorruption of his body? Again, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that in terms of the physical body he was showing everybody and its state being the basis for believing that. But the fact that he's alive and using that body to prove that. And then, of course, what they learn about the state in which he is existing in heaven, and they will as well, which has nothing to do with that actual physical body, right? So insane. We'll get to it more in just a moment in 1 Corinthians 15. But let's see. Where are we now? We're going to 24. Okay, good. I'm just going to real briefly take a quick break. I'll do it real quickly. I'll be right back and we'll finish up. Quick chat check. You guys are funny. Okay. So let's get back to it, and we'll finish up here, and then we'll check with you guys. War Child 47 says, "Hi, Greg, stoning the fatzos." Well, we've got some out there, right? Again, as I've said, if you're an overweight person, like William, that's okay. Not everybody has an easy time with their weight. Although, I think as a Christian man or woman, you should have more discipline than the normal person, probably. And it's healthier for you, But, not everyone's the same has the same biochemistry or physiology. So I understand. But we're dealing with some overweight people who are out of control, right? So when I talk about pigs, blimps, and fatzos, we all know who I'm talking about and the kind of person I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, and I regularly state this, people with like a medical condition or physical limitation or who aren't like the people we are talking about. There's reasons we call these people that. They are that, and these people attack everybody else for those very reasons and more. It's so crazy. So anyway, it's actually kind of funny. But I mean, well, we got Sam out there, right? He's the leader of the blubber butts, right? He doesn't like that description. It goes all the way back to elementary school with Sam, blubber butt, And I think I talked about that a few weeks ago, what that involves. And, people wanted me to use other words like Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, but it doesn't fit the blubber. The blubber of Sam. He does have a lot of sugar, though, right? A lot of sugar fat. Anyway, let's get back to Athanasius. I wonder, he was probably fat, right? Although maybe not. He had certain he had certain problems with physicality. He was like Sam. He had body dysmorphia issues. Perverts. Let's go back here. There. Sorry about that. So we're at 24. Let's read a little bit more and then let's go to 1 Corinthians 15, wrap it up. But what others also might have said, we must anticipate and reply. For perhaps a man might say even as follows: if it was necessary for his death to take place before all, and with witness, that the story of his resurrection also might be believed, it would have been better at any rate for him to have devised for himself a glorious death, if only to escape the ignominy of the cross. But had he done even this, he would give ground for suspicion against himself that he was not powerful against every death, but only against the death devised for him. And so again, there would have been a pretext for disbelief about the resurrection all the same, right? These are all good points. Not really, and again, we're not taking issue with everything Athanasius says. This is overall doctrinal problems and his false representation of the biblical Jesus and God. So death came to his body, not from himself. Okay, just like we were talking about a minute ago. Let's highlight that. But from hostile councils, in order that, talking about the people that put him to death, in order that whatever death they offered to the Savior, he might utterly do away with. And just as a noble wrestler, great in skill and courage, does not pick out his antagonists for himself, lest he should raise a suspicion of his being afraid of some of them, but puts it in the choice of the onlookers, and especially so if they happen to be his enemies, so that against whomsoever they match him he may throw, and be believed superior to them all. So also the life of all, our Lord and Savior, even Christ, did not devise a death for his own body. Okay, so once again, the death is limited to the body. So as not to appear to be fearing some other death, but he accepted the cross and endured a death inflicted by others, and above all by his enemies, which they thought dreadful and ignominious, and not to be faced, so that this also being destroyed, both he himself might be believed to be the life, and the power of death be brought utterly to naught. So something surprising and startling has happened for the death, which they thought to inflict a disgrace was actually a monument of victory against death itself. That is correct. I like that. All Christians can see again, this is the power and wisdom of God, how he used the message, the coming of Jesus, and then Jesus' death to gain this very type of victory here and demonstrate this kind of power over death. Whence neither did he suffer the death of John, his head being severed, nor as Isaias was sawn in sunder, in order that even in death he might still keep his body undivided and in perfect soundness, and no pretext be afforded to those who would divide the church. Okay. So again, we get this same thing, the death being limited to the body here. Let's go on. Let's see if we can get 2 more in. 25. And thus much in reply to those without who pile up arguments for themselves, but if any of our own people also inquire, not from love of debate, which they do, but from love of learning, why he suffered death in none other way save on the cross. Let him also be told that no other way than this was good for us, and that it was well that the Lord suffered this for our sakes. 2, for if he came himself to bear the curse laid on us, how else could he have become a curse unless he received the death set for a curse, and that is the cross? Yes, this is correct. This is a good insight and analysis. So again, he has moments. They're not many. There are a few. No, he's got more. But his overall theology and everything is just gone, so it's wrecked. But there's definitely this substitution in the Bible, is there not? Jesus as the last Adam, and whereas in Adam, all are dying, right? There's your curse, the curse that was laid that he would die because of what he did, disobedience. Whereas Jesus, through his obedience, died and was cursed for no reason, canceling out the prior curse, right? Because now there's no debt. That's how we see it anyway. Back to Athanasius. For this is exactly what is written, cursed is he that hangeth on a tree. Again, if the Lord's death is the ransom of all, and by his death the middle wall of partition is broken down, and the calling of the nations is brought about, how would he have called us to him had he not been crucified? For it is only on the cross that a man dies with his hands spread out. Whence it was fitting for the Lord to bear this also, and to spread out his hands, that with the one he might draw the ancient people, and with the other those whom the Gentiles, from the Gentiles, and unite both of them himself. Now that sounds good, right? But it's just not accurate. Okay, it's a lot of what he does. It's not like they're always trying to misinterpret the Bible. They just almost can't help it to go beyond what's written. So either way, maybe he really thought Jesus died that way and saw it that way. But the fact is, the Bible prophesied, like Jesus said, when it comes to how Moses lifted up the copper serpent it's not likely that he created a cross and then molded the copper serpent around a cross, right? No, it's most likely, based on the conditions and the availability of material and time, that it needed to be done quickly, he just erected a copper snake, a copper serpent, or created a copper line like a snake on a pole. So we actually have prefiguring in the Old Testament of Jesus, like he said in John 8, when once you've lifted up the Son of Man, like Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, we actually have precedent that shows that the Bible provides a basis for seeing that as an upright pole or stake. And as I've talked about in another video, a video I did before, I'm going to do it again, though. It didn't come out very well, so I took it down, but it was good content. It was one on where we talked about the stake and cross in a very extended way. It's not the older videos. It was a newer one in a discussion show where we talked a lot about the Roman practice, but I'm going to do it again. The volume wasn't good. I had some volume issues a few years ago. But in that video, I talked about how the night Jesus was condemned, right? They didn't know. He wasn't like a criminal like Barabbas that they had on, the rolls, the docket of the prison, or at least as a name on a list that they knew needed a cross or a stake. Same with the other prisoner. Jesus was brought to them in a rush by the Jews. And I don't, the idea that they had just a bunch of crosses there is not how this worked, especially in a town like that they were in the area of Judea, where it wasn't like Rome, right? So the idea that you just had a ton of crosses there ready to be picked up for the next guy who's getting the death sentence, right, is just, again, inaccurate. So I think the conditions both lend themselves to this using what you had practice. If a cross was a more typical instrument, then still wouldn't preclude using an upright pole under those conditions, and with the prefiguring of the Old Testament, copper serpent. So what Athanasius says here really just, even though it sounds okay, it's not really based on the text again. Anyway, I kind of put it in blue because it's not like bad. It's just, he's just kind of going off, So you got to recognize that sometimes. Just because something sounds okay, right? That doesn't mean that's what really happened or should be believed in terms of him having his hands spread out, just because that's more inviting, to the Gentiles and the people of the nations and the ancient people, the Jews. Right here, he's talking about them. Anyway, he goes on, for this is what he said, he himself has said, signifying by what manner of death he was to ransom all. I, when I am lifted up, this is just like I was saying a minute ago. I, when I am lifted up, he said, shall draw all men unto me. And once more, if the devil, the enemy of our race, having fallen from heaven, wanders about our lower atmosphere, and there bearing rule over his fellow spirits, as his peers in disobedience, not only works illusions by their means in them that are deceived, but tries to hinder them that are going up. And about this, the apostle says, according to the prince of the power of the air, of the spirit that now worketh in the sons of disobedience. So he's talking about people who are lifted up like Jesus here. He's talking about what that would be like on the earth with the devil and the spirits down here, like in our air. Right? He's saying, yeah, you're being lifted up into the air where all these demons are, right? He's saying that's a powerful witness that Jesus gave because of that. While the Lord came to cast the devil down and clear the air and prepare the way for us into heaven, up into heaven, as the apostle said, through the veil, that is to say, his flesh. And this must needs be by death. Well, by what other kind of death could this have come to pass than by one which took place in the air? I mean the cross. For not only he that is perfected on the cross dies in the air, for only he, that is perfected on the cross dies in the air. Whence it was quite fitting that the Lord suffered this death. For thus being lifted up, he cleared the air of the malignity, both of the devil and of demons of all kind. As he says, I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven, and made a new opening of the way up into heaven, as he says once more. Lift up your gates, O ye princes, and be ye lift up. Right here, ye everlasting doors, for it was not the Word himself that needed an opening of the gates, being Lord of all, nor were any of his works closed to their maker, but we it was that needed it, whom he carried up by his own body. Right, so this is there's no Father, into your hands I entrust my spirit, and you're dead here. Right, and what we're reading from Athanasius, he's saying that it was the Word who took his own body up to heaven. Right here. But we it was that needed it, whom he carried up by his own body. For as he offered it to death on behalf of all, so by it he once more made ready the way up into the heavens. Okay, let's see. Now, let's read this last section. Then we're going to go to 1 Corinthians 15, and we're going to wrap it up. Okay, everybody? Thank you for joining me. It's been about 2 hours, so we should be able to wrap this up within a half hour. I'll be back on Sunday for our last show for a few months, the last live show. I'll try to do some lives if I can, but it'll probably be a few months before I can do another one after Sunday. I will try to get some video clips up, though. Last section, death on the cross. We'll come back to Athanasius in, May, June when I return, or if I can squeeze in alive. We'll get back to this. We're going to finish up Incarnation of the Word. Maybe go back to a few earlier writers, come back to Athanasius. So we'll mix it up so we can get a good, cross-section of writers over time. The death on the cross, then, for us has proved seemly and fitting, and its cause has been shown to be reasonable in every respect, and it may justly be argued that in no way other than by the cross was it right for the salvation of all to take place. For not even thus, not even on the cross, did he himself leave himself concealed. But far otherwise, while he made creation witness to the presence of his Maker, he suffered not the temple of his body to remain long. But having merely shown it to be dead, by contact of death with it, he straightway raised it up on the third day, bearing away as the mark of victory and the triumph over death, the incorruptibility and passibility, which resulted to his body. Right, so again, this is all going towards this physical body. All right? That's how he sees it. That the death and suffering is just the physical body. But he's still alive. He raises it up on the third day, which we also believe. We believe Jesus raised his physical body on the third day. The temple of his body, break down this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. That's talking about his physical body. Now, previously, when I was Watchtower, I wasn't sure that's what that referred to, because in other accounts, people say Jesus said he referred to the temple made with hands and not made with hands, which is also an expression Paul uses for the spiritual body. So, but it's hard to tell if those witnesses were accurate or not, even though what they say is a description that's used in the Bible. The question is whether or not Jesus said that or said what he said in John. So either way, I see that as a reference to his physical body now, more so that he raised up that body. That's what he was talking about. But that he actually did receive the body not made with hands from the Father, which is his spiritual body, the body he actually received from the Father out of heaven, not out of the grave. We'll get to it. And that you see described in John, in Revelation, Revelation 1 and 2, in detail in ways that match the spirit bodies of other spirits in the Bible. So this whole flesh and blood, or flesh and bone, which spirits don't have according to Jesus, who materialized that for that reason, they just are confused and lost because of the dragon. All right. We're finishing up here. For he could, even immediately on death, have raised his body and shown it alive. But this also the Savior in wise foresight did not do. The question is, why not? Well, I believe the Bible answers that too. It says in 1 Peter 3 that he was made alive in the Spirit, and he went to preach to the other spirits like him, a life-giving spirit, but they're spirits in prison. So he went to them first. And in the spirit realm of things, that's how much time it took for the Father to give him his spirit body, him to go to those spirits and get back to the earth to raise his body up before it saw corruption. It all fits and makes sense. It's 100% what the Bible teaches. All right, we're going to get to some of that in just a moment. Let's finish up with Athanasius, which is not what the Bible teaches. For he could, even immediately on death, have raised his body and shown alive, but this also the Savior. Okay, we read that. Yeah. Not died on or that death had not come into perfect contact with him. We read that if he had manifested the resurrection once. Perhaps again, had the interval of his dying and rising again been one of 2 days, been one of 2 days only, the glory of his incorruption would have been obscure. So in order that the body might be proved dead, again, the death is limited only to the body. The word tarried yet one immediate day, right? So see, he, like us, right, like as a spirit being, right, sees the word as like alive before the third day, before he raises up his physical body. But of course, he sees it in a Trinitarian-like sense, not as God receiving his spirit, consistent with Psalm 104 and Ecclesiastes 12, and Jesus' own words, right? And then giving that spirit a body, like we're going to read about in 1 Corinthians 15 and 2 Corinthians 5. Giving that body a spirit in which body he goes to preach to the other spirits before preaching to us. In order that the body might be proved dead, the word tarried one immediate day, and on the third day showed it incorruptible to all. So then that the death on the cross might be proved, he raised his body on the third day. But lest by raising it up when it had remained a long time and had been completely corrupted, he should be disbelieved, as though he had exchanged it for some other body. Okay, so wait a minute. He said, but by raising it up when he had remained a long time and been completely corrupted, he should be disbelieved as though he had exchanged it for some other body. Okay, but again, that's not really consistent with the Bible, right? Because in the New Testament, they're convinced by things other than his body. Mary's convinced by his voice. When he says her name, she thought he was the gardener. And she had heard his voice already. But when he spoke her name, as the way he talked, and he appeared to people on the road to Emmaus, but they didn't recognize him right away. He had things he did. So it wasn't only just that same body that he showed Thomas and others, because that proof was needed for Thomas, doubting Thomas, right? For a man might also from lapse of time distrust what he saw and forget what had taken place. For this cause he waited not more than 3 days, nor did he keep long in suspense those whom he had told about the resurrection. But while the word was still echoing in their ears, and their eyes were still expectant, and their mind in suspense, and while those who had slain him were still living on the earth and were on the spot and could witness the death of the Lord's body, the Son of God himself, after an interval of 3 days, showed his body, once dead, immortal and incorruptible. And it was made manifest to all that it was not from any natural weakness of the word that dwelt in it that the body had died. Again, only the body, right? He does not believe the word died. It's not even the word, right? This is not the word as man. This is Jesus. This is why we get this whole discussion about Michael, Jesus, the same person. But not every description fits the role that he's in when he's changing these natures, right? But he's still that same person, though. So, but for Athanasius, though, he's in the same nature. There's another nature involved, right? For us, he's just the same person with a different nature. Why? You can't be a person without a nature. It's not possible. That's why God has to give it a body, like we're going to see in 1 Corinthians 15 in the first place. But otherwise, you just exist as the spirit that God gives, that he gives to a body. But until it has a body, like with Adam or like with Jesus, it's not an existing being. It's just the spirit. This is the power from whatever God would use to create you or the body. But until they're made, till it becomes a thing, it's not. Right? So, but Athanasius doesn't believe that. He doesn't believe that Jesus, he's the same person, but he was divine, here's the word, and now he's a man, Jesus. And now he's divine word again or whatever. No, he believes he's always the divine word, and that he became the man, Jesus, and that after he died, the divine word didn't die, but on the third day brought up his physical body again as proof of his resurrection, but also to show this incorruptible body that they believe is really what they have in heaven, right? Like flesh and bone, like they say, right? Some of them describe it a little differently, but it's all ultimately, at some point for them, this physical body. Whereas in the Bible, flesh and blood, which is physicality, okay? That is not an idiom for sin. Those are liars and dorks who say that, okay? Too stupid to read something 30 years ago. They can't figure out nothing. They're just not, they're gone. So unfortunately, we have people who are proven liars and they won't stop. They're dragon people. They're liars. They keep lying about the Bible non-stop. Okay? Flesh and blood means a human being. Guess what? All humans are sinful. You see what they do? It's the same thing like with God and a person or divine nature. They just take out one element of what it refers to and say that's what it means. No, you idiots. That's why we call you fags. You're too stupid to interpret things. So you do things that fags do. That's why James calls people adulteresses spiritually. Because they keep doing things that adulterers do. In your cases, the spiritual fags, you guys don't understand. It's referring to the whole thing, okay? A human body. It's not talking about sin at all. It's talking about the physicality of the human body. The humans that have that body are sinful, yes. That's not what it's talking about ever in any of those texts where it says flesh and blood. It's just talking about a human. I already went through every one of those texts in my Jehovah's Witnesses defendant books. Again, everybody, they're reusing already destroyed, like humiliated arguments, right? These people have no idea what body means, nothing. God, nothing. They're just lost. They're lost in the sauce of false doctrine, everybody. And it's incredible when we look at it today and see just how pathetic the dragon made them, right? He's got them believing in things that are completely contradicted by science, psychology, theology, right? They're just this mess of divided perverts who venerate idols, icons, right? Pray to people other than Jesus and God. It's just gotten out of hand. And we have some of the worst representatives on their side out here condemning everybody for all this false doctrine, right? All this terrible teaching by people like Athanasius, who is not following what's written, is he? And speaking of that, let's go to that as we wrap things up. 1 Corinthians 15. Right, so we have been talking about, and we will be talking about more as we get further into Athanasius. I have a whole video on 1 Corinthians 15 All you have to do is type that. My homepage, it'll come right up. I've written about this for years. Like I said a moment ago, I have a whole study on the Greek word soma. I've gone through their best studies and shown that they're just lying, that soma does not inherently require a physical body. That's the whole point of the different descriptions in Paul, physical versus spiritual. And they just refuse to accept it because they don't believe the Bible, everyone. They go beyond what's written. And they're pagan through and through. And they're not going to believe you, okay? Most are not going to believe you. Almost all of them. There's too much to lose, okay? It's not as simple as showing them these texts we're going to read right now. It's not as simple as telling them, no, you guys are fags and you're doing something really stupid. They have more to lose, and they have more spiritual queers telling them, it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry. As you get older, your anus will be fine, right? And that's what they do. They listen to people that make them feel better about their lies. What are you going to do? Follow them? Or are you going to follow the Bible? 1 Corinthians 15. Well, we'll just start. Let's start here. Behooves him to reign until he shall have put all the enemies under his feet. It's over, Watchtower. 26. The last enemy to be abolished is death. Like I said, it's over, Watchtower. All things, for he has put in subjection under the feet of him. This is someone else putting all things in subjection to Jesus. When, however, it may be said that all things have been put in subjection, it is evident, unless you are a retarded Trinitarian, that accepted the one having put in subjection to him. Just like firstborn is accepted from all things Christ over. Put into him all things, 1 Corinthians 15. When now shall have been put in subjection to him all things, then also himself, the Son, will be put in subjection to the one, having put in subjection to him all things, so that may be God, the God, Hatheos, that the God, all in all. And if Jesus is God, the way the God he's turning everything over to at the end of the 1,000 years, it's the Father, right? Who's he turning over to? No Trinity. If Jesus is God fully, like they tell us, right? Fully God, fully is fullness full. If Jesus is God fully, why isn't God already all in all when Jesus is ruling? Oh, I don't know. That's kind of weird, huh? It's like God's someone totally different who turns over things to Jesus, and Jesus isn't God the way the God is, and so he's not all in all the way that God is. And so when Jesus turns everything over back to the God who turned it over to him, that God is all in all. And that's all there is to it. But there's more to the body, right? Otherwise, what will they do who are baptized for the dead? I have a whole video on this too. Nope, Mormons, you are incorrect. The dead are raised. Why also are they baptized for them? See my video on that for more. Why also we are in danger every hour. 31. Every day I die, surely as the in you boasting, brothers, which I have in Christ Jesus, the Lord of us. Just reading the parallel interlinear for convenience. If according to man, I fought wild beasts in Ephesus, what to me, the prophet? If dead not are raised, let us eat, drink, for tomorrow we die. 33. Not be misled. Do corrupt morals, good. Companionships, bad. Like Sam. Emily. Sober up righteously and not sin. Ignorance for God some have, To the shame of you I speak. Shame. Right? I hate to do it, but he said it. It's for you, Sam. And everybody like him. I mean everybody. Because there's no excuse for that, right? 35. But we'll say someone how are raised the dead. With what body? What sort of body do they come? Huh. You mean they come with a body? You mean they're dead if they don't have a body? Okay. Makes sense. That's what Psalm 104, Ecclesiastes 12, Jesus, all of it. It's all true. No Trinity. Game over. 36. Fool you. What you sow not does come to life. If not, it dies. Right? So we know the body dies. Is that all? Are we only a body? Does only our body come to life when we are resurrected? Because we're already living and conscious like they think in heaven? No. That's not what the Bible teaches, is it? Right here. Look. What you sow does not come to life. If not, it dies. Has to die first. And what you sow, not the body that will be. Does everybody see that? Okay. Because most people don't see that. It's right in front of them, right? Exactly. Just like everything else they see and don't believe. What you sow is not the body. Wait a minute. What did he just say in the prior verse? What you sow does not come to life. If not, it dies. So there's something that's sown and there's something that comes to life after it dies, right? Is that the body? No, it isn't. It's explicit, isn't it? What you sow, not the body that will be, but a bare grain. That's you and me. That's the spirit Jesus entrusted to his Father when he died. That's the spirit that goes back to God who gave it when we die. It's not the body. We just read that, right? Okay? So this should be like, you never forget this, even though most people forget this every time. But a bare grain, it may be of wheat or some other of the rest. But God gives it a body. Soma. What does God give a body? If the body is not what's made alive. Made alive in the spirit, in which state he went and preached to other spirits. 1 Peter 3. It's so clear, everybody, right? It's like right in front of us and they can't see it. It's over. As he wills, and to each of the seeds its own body, right? Do any of these people reads? I have a whole video on this, okay? Going over 1 Corinthians 15 in detail. So if you liked what you just heard, there's a lot more detail. But this isn't about this whole chapter where I already have all that detail. I'm just trying to make a few points clear to everybody. Are they clear so far? Okay, good. They're clear to me too, right? It goes on, right? Not all flesh is the same. One is of men, one of beasts, one of birds, right? Oh, and all the heavenly bodies are the same. All the earthly, one is of this glory, one is of that. One glories of the sun, another of the moon, another the glory of the stars. Star from star differs in glory. So also the resurrection of the dead, it is sown in decay. It is raised in immortality. What does he mean by that? It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. It is sown a body physical or natural. That's what, sukikan. That's what that means. It is raised. Right? Just like what Jesus said. Right? In John 10, remember he said, I lay down my life that I can take it up again. And even Athanasius and Trinitarians understand that to be his body. His physical body. His suke. That's what he's talking about. The temple of his body. That's what he's talking about laying aside in John 10, like we read earlier. Right here, he uses the same description for the physical body. Sukikan. It's not talking about a sinful body. It's just talking about a physical body that we all have and that's sown in these lower conditions because of how we're made. But Jesus' body is also characterized as natural. It's just obviously his was weak. He's below the angels, okay? That's why he had to eat and do all these things in order to keep himself alive, and why he didn't grow to old age in a way where he would die, but he didn't have sin, so it's a little bit different, right? In terms of his weakness and corruption. But it's the same otherwise, right? Sukikan, suke, physical. It's raised a spiritual body. If there is a body physical, there is also spiritual. And here's your examples. Here's the two examples he's giving you. All of us. Physical body that we're sown in before we die, and then the one we're raised in. Okay, are you ready for those two examples? He just described them. We saw that. Here are the explicit examples, okay? I don't know how anyone can miss it, but they do. So also it has been written, became the first man Adam. See right there. This is how we know we're talking about the way we're made, is the sowing in a physical body, a natural body, a weak body, a corruptible body. The first man was sown in that body. The first man into a soul, sukain. That's the type of body he's been talking about, sukikan. The last Adam, who could that be? We all know who that is. It's Jesus, the one who was resurrected and that he's talking about and saying if it's not correct, we have no hope. The last Adam into a spirit life-giving. Now, some naive Trinitarians have blown this badly by claiming that because the verb isn't repeated, right? The verb for became, agenita right here. Right? See, it says it has been written, became, agenita. Just like in John 1:3, right? Clearly talking about creating. Became the first Adam. Talking about Adam, a living soul. The last Adam, a life-giving spirit. Greek doesn't always, and rare, it frequently does not repeat the verb that governs multiple statements. We have the same thing, in fact, if we go to Hebrews. I pointed this out before. Again, we get some arguments that are just so bad because they're desperate, right? They're desperate to try to figure out what's going on and why their doctrine is being destroyed. Well, it's because you believe in a fake God, right? Right here, same type of situation. 1:7. And as indeed to the angels, he says, the one making the angels, quoting the Psalms again, the one making, poion, there's the verb, the one making the angels of him spirits, pneumata, and the ministers of him fire of flame. See, it doesn't repeat poion, even though it also qualifies or governs the ministers of him fire of flame. It's talking about them being made fires of flame, just like it's talking about the angels being made spirits. You gotta be really careful who you listen to, okay? Because we've had a lot of problems with Trinitarians. Many Protestants have said a lot of really crazy things related to grammar, and it's just Catholics and the ortho-pagans are whacked out too, but Protestants seem to me to do a lot of this kind of stuff where they start looking at texts and things and they get creative, but it's too creative for their own good, and it just sets them up for really bad exposures. You guys got to be more careful before you start seeing a verb that isn't repeated as if, oh, what, that doesn't qualify what Paul said in 1 Corinthians 15? That what? What is an example, everyone, of a spiritual body? A life-giving spirit, right? A pneuma, a spirit. That's what he's been talking about this whole time. When he's talking about a physical body versus a spiritual body. And how are the dead to be raised? So he says, well, this is how we're made. We're all sown in this condition. In fact, it is written, the first man became this, what we are, a life-giving soul, suke. Jesus says, I have authority to lay down my suke and to take it up again. Trinitarians say, well, that's his physical body. Okay, well, right here in 1 Corinthians 15, it says that his suke is a physical body. It's the body Adam had, right? It's contrasted with a spirit. So if a suke, a physical body, is what we're sown in, what are we raised in? Come on, right? It's so simple and obvious, right? And they're so stupid because they're liars and they don't believe the Bible, and they make a lot of problems for people who do. It's very obvious, right? It's a spirit, right? So this is what a soul, a suke body is. Adam. This is what a spirit body is. Last Adam. You'd have to be a Trinitarian not to be able to figure this out. Why? Is self-imposed stupidity is the only reason I can think of. They just can't break free of this dragon, right? Maybe we can bring some Protestants with us, guys. I don't know. The Protestants, you guys have got to get away from these pagan creeds and councils, man. You guys have got to get away from these fools like Athanasius, right? We'll pick up on 27 next time in a few months. But it's out of control the way they rely on. Like William and Sam say what? We're not good enough to even wash the toilets of people like Athanasius, when they're not even good enough to have their own toilet. They should be taking a dump in their robes and deal with it, because they're liars and they're horrible people, and no one's good, especially not them or those who lie about God, Jesus, and the Bible, let alone the Holy Spirit. So let me just see how you all are doing. Make sure everything ended okay here. We didn't have any issues. It looks good. Let me just see if there's anything I can address here before I close it off. I will be back Sunday, okay, everybody? I've got more uploads I'm going to be doing over the next several months, so those will continue. I'll be posting things. Again, I'll try to do more lives after Sunday, but probably not until May or June after Sunday. So if you want to be a part of our last live of the year and for a few months, Sunday's the day. We're going to talk about, at least part of the discussion will be about Christmas and holidays, but mostly Christmas. And then we'll talk about some other important things too. Look at the thumbnail. I'll try to include your comments or questions. And I think we're good. It looks like everyone's doing okay. I appreciate that quest for Christ. Maybe, right? I use it infrequently, but coming back from my break, I don't know what happened. Maybe an update or something, but it wasn't exactly the way it was before. So some of the settings were just off. Either way, yeah, it's a good point, Ruben. Ruben Medina, what body did he offer up? It's almost like they know that, but then they can't accept it. They just can't really figure anything out. Everybody, the reason is not always because they're gone. The Father blinds them. If you look at these people, right, none of us are good. They're sure not good, right? I mean, there's some of these people that are. I mean, we've got wife beaters, we've got rapists, and we've got perverts. Okay, that's the least of the problems in some cases. So, I mean, they are in trouble. Let them continue to collapse. Believe me, there's not going to be a Protestant, Catholic, ortho-pagan revival. There's not going to be any revival for any false religion. There's only going to be destruction, ultimately, for anybody who promotes a fake God and who lies about the true one. We're not here to judge you with finality. We're just here to state things that are true generally according to what is written. So I highly recommend that you take the time to find out what you need to believe in order to be correct, or just try not to be so blasphemous if you disagree with other people and you really don't have the qualifications that you need to say what you're saying. And I don't mean educational qualifications necessarily. I mean the whole package. If you're a pile of garbage, you should be the last person up here throwing garbage. Agreed? With that having been said, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening. And I will be back Sunday for another live show, last one for a while, like I've said. We'll get back to Athanasius as soon as possible, okay? I hope you've enjoyed this kind of return back to his writings, even though they're pagan. He's got some stuff that's useful, and we need to learn what he's teaching because all these people keep relying on him, even though they probably don't realize what they're relying on, do they? But this way we can get familiar with one of their big heroes and one of the main proponents of dragon theology, going all the way back. So enjoy the rest of your evening and weekend, and I will see you all Sunday for more as we praise Jah in Jesus' name. With that having been said, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening. And I will be back Sunday for another live show, last one for a while, like I've said. We'll get back to Athanasius as soon as possible, okay? I hope you've enjoyed this kind of return back to his writings, even though they're pagan. He's got some stuff that's useful, and we need to learn what he's teaching because all these people keep relying on him.